Hello and welcome back to the Advancing Healthcare Innovation Show. I am your host, Michael Stamatinos, and if you're new to us, welcome. It's great to have you here. We're super excited for a number of different reasons, but we're having some phenomenal conversations with just some really incredible leaders that are really painstakingly reshaping the future of health. And we're really focused and passionate about a few different areas. We're passionate about healthcare innovation, leadership, access, adoption. And if it's your first time tuning in, let me just take a quick step back and tell you a little bit more about what we're trying to get done here. So we're focused on bringing real stories of innovation to life, not things that you're reading from a book, but like real stories of real people that are actually getting stuff done. And the objective is to highlight them and give them an opportunity to share their stories with our community and ultimately with the world. We've got an amazing action-packed year of just some incredible leaders that are going to be coming onto the show. But wherever you are, however you're consuming this, if you're watching this, if you're listening to it, hit the subscribe button now so that any of the new episodes come directly to you. So today's guest is it's actually one of those people who's been building the future before most of us even saw it coming. Zaw Thet is the CEO of Exer Labs, a company that's using computer vision and AI to turn any camera into a motion coach. So think rehab, fitness, injury prevention, all powered by your phone. But what makes Zaw's story really interesting, it's not just the tech. Having kind of spoken with him beforehand and doing research going into this, it's really kind of the arc of his story. And he started his first company at 19. Like 19, I don't think I could even do a proper Starbucks coffee order. The guy's building a company. He went on to build 4Info, one of the pioneers in mobile advertising, was named as Business Week's Mobile Barons. And most people would have stopped there. He didn't. His career has always been about one thing, using technology to help people live better lives. And that mission took him from Stanford to the United Nations Foundations of Global Entrepreneurs Council to where he is today, which is helping redefine how movement, health, and care all intersect. So at Exer Labs, and we'll dig into this more today, he and his team are proving that AI doesn't replace human touch. If anything, it amplifies it. And they analyze how people move, how they're making recovery faster, exercising smarter, and preventing care that is personalized. So Zaw's story is a combination of a multitude of things: grit, vision, purpose, and I think that creates really interesting dynamic for a really cool company that can redefine categories altogether. And that's why I'm really excited about this conversation. So Zaw, great to see you. Welcome to
You
the
too.
show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I mean, hearing that makes me want to de-age myself by a couple decades, but I appreciate the intro.
Yeah. Listen, man, you got people come on the show, you got to hype them up, but that's real deal stuff. Look, just kind of opening things up, just been thinking a lot about this. You've lived in extremes, mobile baron, to a monk, investor, operator. I mean, when was like the last time that you actually truly sat still?
Haha, that's a good question. It's not very often, I should say. I think the stillest I get is the 5 minutes a day that I sit in a cold plunge, and that may be about it. Because you can't move, otherwise it gets way colder. At least that body heat gets trapped in a little bit when you stay still. But no, it's been a real interesting life and career. I can't complain. The monk thing may be a little overblown. Yes, I was a monk for 2 weeks, but it's called in Burmese and Buddhist heritage. It's called a shimpu, and it's almost like the equivalent of a bar
Mm,
mitzvah. So it's something that you do
mm,
when you're very young. And I actually, just looking back on it now, I'm wishing now that I actually had the opportunity to do it as I was older because I really actually remember it. So this was about, I should say, So I'm 45, and so this was about 1993, and so this was
Hmm.
pre-cell phones, pre-internet, really
Yeah, yeah.
pre-internet, right? There was early GeoCities, maybe a little bit of Yahoo, not even Netscape. I think at that point we were on some old browsers or doing Unix, and yeah, I remember it being one of the last real freeing moments in time where like literally I had nothing to do except meditate, and we had to meditate all day and fast all day,
Hmm.
and there's something to be said for that, man. I think I might go back there for a week or so at some point, definitely in my life, but I don't know if it's going to happen soon with young kids and a company.
Yeah. One of the things that we share in common is our parents are immigrants. So we are sons of immigrant parents. I'm just sort of curious, what did that environment teach you about, possibility? And I guess was there like a specific moment where you realized that, your parents' sacrifices were shaping your like tolerance for risk?
Yeah, so my parents immigrated from Burma in the early 70s, and Burma went through, as we talked about a little bit before, but Burma went through this period of really, really bad unrest when the military took over, and Burma went, from a country who had one of the highest literacy rates in the world to one where unfortunately, like you'd go back there and like your cab driver would have a PhD in physics because that was the only job that they could basically find. And it's still a very sad situation. But my parents and a lot of our family was lucky enough to be able to, either walk across the border in a lot of cases to Thailand or other places, or get sponsored to come over to the US in my parents' case,
Mm,
because they were both doctors. And so at that time, we loved having new doctors come into the country, and that's a separate subject for another day. But it really is an American dream story in the sense of like they came still, with barely any money, still owing, their airfare and all these other things, and really built their whole lives and career, and sacrificed a lot to get both myself and my sister into higher education like Stanford and then into, successful careers. I have to say, I'm not sure I was wise enough to ever really think about those sacrifices or what that meant or
mm.
really give that appreciation really until I had kids. That
Mm.
was, I think, an unlock for me of like, oh, this is not just an easy thing. Like this is work, and it's lovely and amazing, and it's it obviously doesn't
Yeah.
feel like work because it's family.
Did,
But it's just
when
like
they
starting a
came
company.
here, did they speak English when they came here?
They did. A lot of
Okay,
folks
okay.
don't, but
Yeah.
Burma, because it was an English colony, is
Got
basically how a lot of the schools were, at least back then, were taught in
it. Okay.
English, and so
Yeah.
they speak the Queen's English in some ways even better English than I do. In our Americanized version, slang, whatever. And especially when I was 15 or 16, I'm sure they couldn't understand half the slang that was coming out of my mouth, just like we don't
Yeah.
understand or all the slang that's coming out of our kids' mouth these days.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm trying to pick up on it. So here's I'll give it a go. Let me give you the drip here. Let me give you the
Yeah.
drip.
Well, we have 6 or 7 minutes left, which was,
All
which
right.
by the way, I just saw was the word of the year is the Merriam-Webster word of the year, which I think is hilarious. It's great.
Which what? Let me give you the
Six,
drip. Well,
six, no, 6, 7. 6, 7 is the
6, 7.
word of the year.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So you started a company at 19, your first company at 19.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that this doesn't seem like normal behavior. Like, what were you trying to prove and to whom?
It wasn't normal behavior. It was normal for the time where I was though. And so just a little bit of context. So
Yeah.
I grew up in two places. I grew up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. My parents were at Duke University. And
Hmm.
then we moved to Wisconsin when I was 10 or around then. And I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. So I'm sort of a product of the triangle and then of the Midwest. Go Packers. And for my almost my entire teenage life wanted to go to Stanford for college. Like that was the place that I wanted to be. And I didn't really have any direct ties to it. None of my family had gone there. I had family that lived in the Bay Area, and so when we went out there and would
Yeah.
go like visit the campus, And I went and toured all the East Coast schools and did that. And man, they were cold. And let me tell you what, Wisconsin was cold, like cold, cold.
Yeah, oh yeah, oh
Coming
yeah,
from
oh yeah.
coming from the, from North Carolina to Wisconsin that first winter was a rude awakening. And so I had
December.
this idyllic vision of like Northern California, warm beaches, palm trees. They didn't tell you that you can't swim in the ocean without a wetsuit because it's freezing, but and then and then San Francisco is always foggy. But the Bay Area became my home when I went out there at 18. And so when I got there, it was this amazing time. It was 1998. Google hadn't even started yet, or was just basically incorporated or being incorporated. And literally after my freshman year, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was burned out on science and healthcare. Funny enough,
Mhm.
full circle, I've come back to that.
Yeah,
But at the time, like this was like the first .com boom. This was like pets.com. I mean, this was
yeah,
Google was just launching, like Yahoo was massive, Excite was massive, eBay was just going. Like it was like the world was our oyster, and they were handing out money to kids basically at the time who could write a little code, build websites, and I could do all of those things. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career. I didn't have any specific. I knew I loved history and political science and strategic relations and all of these things. I knew that wasn't going to be a great career. And so I just said after freshman year, you know what? I'm going to make this jump. Like I've got an idea. I want to go build a search engine, and that's what
mm,
I went to go do at 19. And I don't regret any minute of that decision. It's been a phenomenal journey since then.
yeah. I mean, so you were in it. You're in the proximity of it. So it
Yeah,
was it was normal to be like, yeah, I'm gonna go and do this
there were
versus
six
maybe
there were
being
six
somewhere
dudes
in
in my
yeah,
yeah. If you were elsewhere in the world, it would have been so
yeah,
weird,
yeah,
right? But like
yeah.
there were six dudes in my house alone that all dropped out of school, including me, to basically go start companies. Actually, not all of them dropped out. Some of them stayed in school, which I don't know if that was the right call or not. But I dropped out because I was like, I got to be able to do this full time. Um, and we all went on to to build some of the foundational stuff in tech, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. All right, I want to fast forward because when you and I first met, when we met in Nashville, we're chilling at this bar, and then you're showing me your stuff, and I was literally just blown away. I mean, so you know, if you're listening, I mean, Exer turns any camera into a motion coach. It's freaking wild, okay? And what was like that exact moment for you when you realized, hey, like the future of health is it's really hidden in how we move. Like, talk to me about that because you said you
Yeah,
weren't you started in healthcare, then you left, and you kind of came back. Like unpack that a little bit.
yeah. So I've been lucky. I've been building all sorts of different tech companies and different verticals. I think the common theme is that I take big laborious industries, whether it be telecom or automotive or commerce, and
Right.
I'm one of those folks that just beats my head against the wall, to the detriment of my head, but like beats my head against the wall
Yeah.
until I actually like break through. And so I've been doing that in different industries, and that's sort of the pattern. And what got me really interested on the health side was I started seeing a lot of interesting digital health companies in about 2017, 2018, that I'd
Hmm.
started a fund with a couple of other partners that was making early stage investments in companies and incubating them at the same time. So it was a
Right.
super early seed fund. Each fund was about 100 million, and so we were blessed to be able to find some of these amazing entrepreneurs to partner with. And I
Hmm.
had done a lot of work on the AI side on autonomous vehicles, and so because of that, I was like, hey, all of this AI that we're building on the edge is really interesting.
Hmm.
Simultaneously, then I was also looking at a bunch of different digital health investments. And so it's a
Hmm.
lot of the companies that are, have gone public today. A lot of them were selling into, at the time, like I didn't know any of these terms, but they were selling into employers, they were selling into payers,
Right.
they were doing all these things where I was like, that's cool. But like, I think it was a lot of it was my family bent, was because I came from a
Hmm.
family of physicians. I was like, what are we actually doing to help providers? Like, what are we actually doing to help
Right.
the system
Right.
as a whole, not just try and totally rip and replace, humans out
Right.
of the loop.
Right.
And so I saw that there was this really interesting marriage between the two of like, hey, AI is becoming increasingly better. This is 2018. We have these huge pervasive problems in the healthcare system that I was then learning about.
Hmm.
lack of providers, or lack of doctors, lack of nurses, lack of physicians assistants, the reimbursements going down so that people are at their wits end trying to deliver better care, more personalized care for patients, but at the same time increasingly getting paid less, being understaffed, right? Not being able to having all this infrastructure and red tape that they have to cut through to do anything. And so, there was this aha moment. My co-founder Sean, who's our CTO, was working on a mobile labs company, and
Hmm.
I went to him and basically said, "Hey, Sean, like, can we do some of this human body estimation? Can we just do it on the phone? Like, why do we need to? No patient's gonna and health system is ever gonna let people send their videos up and down, and that's gonna be too slow. And
Right.
for people with accessibility issues or don't have access to Wi-Fi, that's gonna be too expensive. What if we ran it just on the phone?" And we ended up training our own model and our own neural net to do that. And once that happened, that to me, like, I can't claim that I had this like premonition before, but once we saw that first version, and you saw a iteration of that when we met in
Yeah.
Nashville, once I saw that, I was like, oh, there's something here. And then the next challenge is figuring out what is that something here, and how are we actually going to build a platform that really works for healthcare and not something that's, like the famous Silicon Valley thing is build this amazing product, but no one wants to use it, right? So we had to really build within the confines of like what healthcare was.
Yeah. Well, when did you first actually see it work? Like an actual person moving differently, and you knew that it was like, wow, this is embedded within care. Like, is there a story behind that?
Yeah. So the first iteration of what we did was it was an app called the Perfect Plank. Okay, and so we did this primarily to get data during COVID, and I'll explain why. So we 2019 we decided to basically go incorporate the company. My fund and a bunch of us basically put in the first money to go get all this running, and we're looking at it and we're like, hey, we need to now get to the next level of the platform, which is like the AI basically needs to be able to analyze what it's seeing. So great, it can see all these points on the human body, right? In airplane mode. That's fantastic. That's step one. Step two is then understanding what it's seeing. And so the best position that we could think of for people
Mhm.
was a static position where they're not moving really,
Right.
which was a plank. And so if you've ever done a plank, which is not fun, but we all got really good at
Yeah.
planks during COVID, we basically put out an app called the Perfect Plank that would watch you doing a plank, and it would tell you if your head was starting to drop, if your butt was getting too high, if you weren't like clenching your core in enough and it was starting to droop. And we use that to train the algorithms in terms of like, how do we see movement? What can we actually see? That was the very, very
Interesting.
first time that we actually ever saw it interacting with humans. And so we were just setting it to, or we put it on the App Store, and tens of thousands of people downloaded it. And in fact, it was just a research app. When we closed it, we had this huge uproar because all of these communities were using it because we built in like fun leaderboards and all this fun game stuff that we had known from Silicon Valley. But it was just for fun, and it was just to get us data to build the next level of the platform. But that's when we knew that there was really something there. There was about early 2020, right after COVID, when this thing we released it during like the first month of COVID, I think.
Interesting. So you kind of went directly to the consumer to get the data. I mean, but you know this, and you've been in it for a minute now. I mean, healthcare is slow, um,
Yes.
bureaucratic, um, resistant. Uh,
I'm not saying any of these things you're saying them.
I mean, is there like how did you kind of go about turning around some of these skeptics into like believers of what you were doing?
Yeah, it's interesting, Michael. So I think it's really hard to turn skeptics into believers. And so instead, what we sought out in the early days was believers. And so we knew that
Mm.
we were going to get skeptics everywhere, right? And this
Right,
was,
right,
now
right,
we're
right.
talking about 2020, 2021, 2022. And we had continued building the platform. We had heard a bunch of different objections from health systems, let's just call them. And the objections were, hey, we don't want you to just build a point solution that does one single thing like rehab. We want you to build a platform that can handle multiple things for us. Okay, so that was objection number one. Objection number two was cool. And all the regulatory stuff has to be done. So you have to be an FDA class 2 medical device. You have to be clinically validated, right? And all of those things need to be complete before we even think about bringing you in the system. Okay, so that was objection number two. I'm not saying that they have a lot of objections. I'm just going to list what they are. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
no, it's
But
okay. Yeah,
there
might be a
might be a
few.
couple. Might be a few. The third was, and you have all of your IT and security needs to completely be compliant and be ready
Yes.
to integrate with Epic if we choose. We may not choose, or we may choose, but
Yeah.
you need to have SOC 2 Type 2. You need to have HIPAA compliance. You need to make sure you can handle SSO, all the IT security things. Great,
Yeah.
check.
That's
Okay. Workflow, which I think is the big thing that most early digital health companies forget, right? Like workflow matters. And so you have to not make our clinicians, if you're selling stuff that providers are going to use, you have to make stuff that's not going to make their life that much harder. And in some ways, make
yeah.
it easier for them
Yeah.
overall. That was objection. I don't even know what number we're on. I think four.
Yes.
And then the
Several.
fifth one was we want you to deliver not just better patient outcomes, but we wanted you to deliver more efficiency. So obviously that gets to the
Hmm.
workflow standpoint and other things, patient time, et cetera. And then we also want to be able to have additional revenue opportunities if that's possible. And if it's not, that's great, but it would be really nice to have. Wink, wink. So we heard all of those things, and we're like, okay, well, this is going to be a long haul. So buckle up. We're going to have to go figure out how to do all these things. And one by one, there was no silver magic bullet. One by one, over the course of about 4 years, is when we really started to knock off every single one of those things that I just said. So that's that's how we sort of that was the next phase of our journey, so to speak, as you're
Yeah.
asking, is like how we then started to progress into actually working with health systems.
And what was it like trying to find those early on, those early believers when you're in the midst of it, you're in the thick of the battle, and then when did you start realizing that, like, hey, we kind of like have some momentum here?
Yeah.
What was sort of the
I,
gap between that?
so there was a couple different aha moments for me. One aha moment is we were building out basically a clinical advisory board, which is something that I would recommend for any startup in this space. Like there is no magic trick to it. We used, introductions from our network. We didn't have a pre-built network of clinicians. We just found people, and we talked to, for the 15 or so people that are on our clinical advisory board, we probably talked to 200 at least, if not more. And most of them, to your question, were skeptics, right? They're like, this is interesting, but I don't know how I would ever use it. But we found the 15 that really believed at amazing institutions, at Mayo, at Stanford, at UCSF, at
Right.
Columbia, et cetera. And so that allowed us to then start to build the research base. And there was what is really started to convert basically skeptics into believers, because it wasn't us doing it, but it was their peers that were doing it. And
Mm.
their peers that were writing papers on Exer, and their peers that were starting to use Exer as a verb, like, hey, when you Exer this patient, I want you to go, or I want you to go find the Exer results to see what it says in the chart. When that started happening, that's when the snowball for us has really started to roll downhill as opposed to rolling uphill, which was long
Yeah.
number of years of rolling it uphill.
Well, I mean, let's go there. I mean, what was like the hardest part of making Exer scalable and sustainable? I mean, what were some of the trade-offs that were kind of keeping you like up at night?
Yeah, so it's helpful probably for folks that are listening. I wish I could show them, and we can put a link or in the to one of our videos or something in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
you
yeah.
know in
We'll
the
do
in the
it.
podcast, et cetera. But um, so what we do is we have a platform that has lots of different modules that are in them. And each of these modules is set up for different kinds of diseases or in different kinds of basically departments within a health system. So we have outpatient, and then we also have folks that are using it, inside of a clinic, basically. And so um, neuro, primary care, orthopedics, PM&R,
Mhm.
geriatrics, pain spine, those are all modules and assessments we cover. So, for example, for neuro, one of the things that we do is that you come into a clinic for the first time. Maybe it's a neurosurgery, or maybe a consult, or maybe it's a neuro movement disorder clinic. And, before the doc even sees you as you're being roomed, the MA has an iPad. It has the Exer app on it. It usually talks to Epic, so it's like connects all the data back to the chart. And they basically run you through a couple of assessments. And those assessments are things like a tremor assessment, a gait
Yes.
assessment. So usually you'd have to go to a very expensive gait lab or wait a long time to do all these things. Takes 2 minutes basically as you're in the room or walking to the room. Yeah, so from a clinical perspective, you've got an iPad that gives you a bunch of these great assessments. It gives you a pre-screen, right, of exactly what kind of condition, what type of tremor this might be, what type of gait abnormality someone might have, and allows you to track that data longitudinally over time. And so that was, for us, was the next phase basically in getting this, starting to scale out to tons and tons of systems is that ease of use, right? It's super easy for them to get it into their
Mm.
workflow. It doesn't we don't store any PHI if they don't want us to, so it can just be done right without any video. It's just pulling the assessment data that goes right into the chart. Doesn't even have to pass through our systems. So we've tried to take away as many of those objection points as possible. And where we continue to grow from here is really just adding numbers of different modules, new conditions, new diseases and pathologies come up all the time. We have to be somewhat selective about what research partners we actually work with. But at any given point in time, we've got 10 plus different research projects that are going at different institutions across the country. So it's a super exciting time.
And you find that let's say that windmill, the flywheel, now that you're backing all of this up with research, peer-reviewed journals, that has been basically a momentum builder for you and the team. So you've kind of played the long game in a sense.
Yeah, that's the really long game because this research thing doesn't it's not a quick win, right?
Yeah,
It's almost like a pharma pipeline in the sense of like you have to go, even though we don't, have to go through all the necessarily the same number of clinical trials, we still have a very stringent process that we have to cover from an FDA standpoint to be a class two medical device. And so even though it's software, right, and it's not technically
right.
actually a hardware device. So the flywheel for us has been research. Research leads to, credibility. That credibility that leads to papers and then is presented at conferences leads to new potential customers and new potential partners. And then each one of those exponentially keeps growing on their own. And
Mm.
because it's already been validated by a respected, institution slash collaborator, they're moving on to new research, but then also starting to pay for the use of what we validated on that original research. And so it is a much longer game than a traditional startup might necessarily play.
Yeah, so like you as the CEO, I mean, how far out do you look? I mean, can you fast forward 5 years from now and, look at, hey, what does the hospital look like when Exer's vision becomes, mainstream? Can you even see that far out? I mean, because I mean, even
Yeah,
a year in startup land is long, but how far out can you look?
yeah, I mean, we have a lot of patience, thankfully. I mean, I think when you're lucky enough to be able to build a company that has a purpose behind it, and the purpose is not, is something that's so mission driven and is relatable to almost any human, um, because human motion is fundamentally something that all of us deal with, whether it be for ourselves, our parents, our kids, right?
Yeah.
We're in those, especially for our generation, we're in those sandwich years between two, and so it's something that everyone understands. And so because of that, it means for us that we have to like we certainly have like 5 year plans. It's hard to have a 1 year plan. Generally what I tell the team is that we have to keep multiple irons in the fire. It's basically doing all of the things as an entrepreneur that as an investor, I always told my entrepreneurs not to do,
Yeah.
which is like play 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 five or six cards at the same time, because with healthcare you never know how long one of them is basically going to take, and so it might take a year for one of these to pay off. It might be really fast and you get lucky, and we've gone from an initial conversation to a live implementation. I think our fastest is like, I think it was like 18 days, but that's like the rare exception, right? And that's only because
Yeah,
we had a
yeah, that's wild.
relationship. It was so quick. It was way too quick for us. And so in a lot of cases, we have to think about like, okay, how many providers are we able to deliver? How many millions of patients can we basically improve their outcomes for? And that's the real goal and metric for 5 years. To be able to be at scale across every department that we can possibly be at in the health system. So not just be inside of ortho or inside of hand wrist, but cover and have this cross collaboration between, primary care, ortho, PM&R, geriatrics, pain, spine, cover all of those in clinic. Then we have the telehealth and the at-home component, which we really still have on the platform, but are saving for years 2 and years 3 going
Right.
forward, where we then say, cool, all those same in-clinic assessments, now that the Epic integration is done with you, now we're going to make those available for you over telehealth. Now we're going to make that available for you to send home with patients in an at-home app. That's the real long game here, and that's the 5 year sort of journey that we're on now. Is flushing
Mm.
out all the squares in the matrix, basically.
It's interesting when you talked about like having multiple irons in the fire. And as a VC, you've sat on the other side of the table. What do most investors, I guess, not understand about founders in healthcare?
Well, we all have a purpose, I think, behind what we're doing. I think no one gets into healthcare without some purpose, because otherwise, why would you do it? I think that it is a really interesting time to be inside of AI in healthcare. I mean, we obviously started in 2018, 19 when we officially incorporated, 18 when we started training data. So we were ahead of this whole current AI wave. This new wave in AI is obviously only helping us because everyone's getting much more interested in AI, but is
Yeah.
also a little bit scared of all the generative, the chat stuff, and putting that in front of patients. And because we don't talk to patients, I actually just got off a call where instead of us talking to patients, we were talking about how like we just deliver data back to a provider, and then the provider has the communication with the patients. And there was this aha moment basically in the room where they were like, oh, okay, so we don't have to worry about you just like inserting messages to patients. So we live in this really interesting time for where AI is, and as an investor, I think I would caution other investors that are looking at the space to be like, hey, what unique data set, if you're in AI, does this startup have? Because Epic has
Hmm.
a huge amount of data. We just saw the announcement of all their new AI products. I don't know how many different companies they just tried to put out of business just now. And
A
then
few.
two would be patience, right? A few, right? And then the second thing would just be patience. Like it is not
Yeah.
something where there's a traditional sales cycle. You're not going to see the same crazy ramp curve as like a lot of the generative AI companies that you see on out there today. It's going to be this slow and steady wins the race type of deal, and building moats over time. So that's my 2 cents.
Let's give a little bit of a commercial around Exer. Like, tell people how they can follow you, follow the work that you and the team are doing. Like, I just want to make sure we give you that space to sort of share it however you want to share it.
Yeah, appreciate it. No, the easiest way is to go to our website, exer.ai. You can check us out there. And then I would also encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn. That's probably where we're most active. And you can find me, easy to follow, Zaw Thet. Quick search. There's more than Zaw Thets out there in the world than you would actually think of. But probably the one that pops up first in the US. And then follow Exer. And we continue to publish all of the papers that we're doing there. We aren't the most public company in the sense that like we stay pretty stealthy and below the radar just because we try and let our work speak for ourselves. But you'll see some of our stuff pop up there for sure. And if you're a health system or a provider that's interested in what we're doing, then of course reach out. And my email is easy. It's zaw@exerai.com.
Amazing. All right, let's end with something fun. Let's just do like a quick rapid fire before we kind of wrap up with this. Um, you're an active guy. I guess what's one app on your phone that you can't live without?
Oh, what can I not move without? I guess there's a couple. The biggest one is probably Spotify for me. I'm sort of old school. I just like a good music, a good playlist. I tend to program my own workouts pretty good. I don't actually use apps for my workout. I know I shouldn't say that out loud.
All right. So then, because you're a music guy, so if Exer had a soundtrack, what song opens
Oh,
up the movie?
oh, oh, that's a good question. I don't know. It would be some Wu-Tang song for sure. Uh, not exactly sure what politically appropriate content would go on
Yeah,
there, but something from the original Wu-Tang album.
right
It's
on,
like a
right
battle,
on.
it's like it's a constant struggle, but it's also about, uh building something in harmony and peace, but with like grit and determination.
There you go. And then what do you do, when you're not grinding, putting things out there, building? How do you kind of decompress? Because there's other founders that are listening to this and maybe they're having a hard time doing that. What do you do to decompress?
Yeah, I used to. I'm getting better about this, Michael. I think it's something that it's a learned skill over time. I don't think it's natural to anyone. We talk about and you hear this 996 culture and all these other things, and like, yeah, I've done that. I've slept under desks plenty of times, and pulled all nighters. I don't get the best optimal results for myself doing that anymore. So I
Hmm.
try and prioritize sleep. I know that seems crazy, but I'm way sharper. I'm way quicker. Um, I don't worry about getting the inbox zero every night. I make sure I work out. I sauna cold plunge. I try and eat healthy, and then have a great community and village around me. And so in Colorado, it's relatively easy. We've got all the activities, so I'm not out as often as I like, but hiking, fishing, skiing, hunting. I'm very bad at golf, so that's usually off the table, but I'll go hit at a at a simulator every once in a while. I
Right
try and keep
on.
it active. Yeah,
Awesome. It's been a super fun conversation. So I don't think I've ever met someone that I guess who can go from, monk to motion AI in one lifetime. So you definitely check the box on that. And I think what I love about your story is how you've been able to sort of connect these two worlds where I guess most people think they're opposites, like the ability to innovate and also continue to keep moving. And for me, when you've been mentioning Exer, I mean, the thing that I think about, it's like this visual, it's a bridge. You're a bridge between data and like dignity, for a patient and movement and the meaning behind the movement and how clinicians can leverage that. It's just super powerful. So I just want to thank you for being here and just sort of sharing your story. And if whoever's listening, if you're listening to this right now and you feel like this conversation challenged you or made you think differently, then please, would you mind sharing this episode? And if there's a topic that you want us to explore or a leader that you'd like to hear from, please, drop me a note, leave a comment. I do read them. This platform for me, it's about community. It's not just content. So thanks for listening. Keep building with purpose, and we'll see you next time on the Advancing Healthcare Innovation Show.
appreciate you. Thank you, everyone.
You bet.